would like to again welcome Deborah Lubin Pond and her kindergarten students. As you know, each year for Martin Luther King Day, students write about their dreams for kindness and happiness. And I know Mrs. Pond wants to speak about her students before they begin reading their own sentiments, but I have to ask Mrs. Pond, do you teach your students how to dress for success? Because some of those outfits are just amazing. Come on up, Mrs. Pond.
Share our dreams with you. Our children know that at the very young age of 5 or 6 that they can make a very positive impact in this world each and every day by making choices that cause other people's hearts to feel happy and cared for. We feel very confident that Dr. King would feel so very proud of our children tonight as they stand here before all of you to share their thoughts about what this beautiful world can be as a result of kindness, peace, understanding, love, appreciation, and the celebration of differences. Now we turn to the stars of the show, our kindergarten cuties, and there's so much to applaud for, but we just ask that we save all of those applause until all the children in all the classes have gone. So thank you. Good evening. I have two of my friends here. One was due to come too. So this is Dalton. Dalton's going to go first.
I have a dream for everyone to be kind. I'm more cookie. I have a dream that people will be happy. Feel better. I had a dream of the world to be safe. I have a leaf that everyone will have a friend. I have a dream that everybody has a bullseye. I have a dream that everyone's dream comes true. I have a dream that everybody will have books at school. I have a dream that there is no fighting. I have a dream that everybody gets along. I have a dream that everything that was extinct came back alive. I have a dream that everyone is beating time. Honor. I have a dream that I and my friends are nice. I have a dream that every class is healthy. I have a dream that people have food.
the next item we have is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the high school ski/snow sports club field trip, the resignation of Kristen Fazzino, and the correspondence report. Dan Cruzat makes the motion, Rebecca seconds. Is there any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And that moves us to public participation. During public participation, the board welcomes commentary from citizens regarding agenda items. We request that speakers be concise and respectful in their comments, do not make reference to specific persons, avoid repetition of comments made by other speakers, and limit comments to no more than 3 minutes. The first public participation will be confined to agenda items only, and the second public participation will be for agenda items as well as issues the public wishes the board to consider in the future. The Board of Education does not discuss personnel items in public. If you desire more information or answers to specific questions, please complete the citizen's request for information form located on the table. Is there anybody who would like to come up for public participation? No. Sensing no public participation. Move on to reports. First one is the chair report, which you should have a copy of in front of you, and I didn't keep a copy for myself. Oh, wait, I do have a copy, I'm sorry. So the legislative breakfast occurred this morning at Sandy Hook School, and we very much appreciate Kathy Gambos, Tim Napolitano, Kevin Enzalati, who's the custodian at Sandy Hook School, for hosting it. And it was a great dialogue, a joint effort between CAVE and Ed Advance to lead the discussion. And I also appreciate Kathy June's phenomenal organization skills in getting that all organized and together for us. I don't know, Dan Cruzan and Rebecca Herman States were there, as well as Dr. Fred Reed, Ron Binkowski, who else am I missing? Peterson was there, Tim Milano, Kathy Gambos, Tom Einhorn. But we had Board of Ed folks from other districts, we had superintendents, we had 2 legislators there, Mitch Walensky and JP Stravinsky were there. So it was a great conversation. And you have some of the copies that were handed out of that. And you can still log on to the site and give feedback on some of the issues that you think are important and see what other people thought. The para-educator negotiations team, not having a whole lot of feedback or other volunteers, it will be Rebecca Herman Stites and myself on the negotiating team. And regarding budget discussions, I'm just asking that you let Dr. Rodriguez know where your questions are remaining so that we can ensure that the board has access to the people who have the information that you might have questions about, and that we can thoughtfully deliberate about whatever issues remain. If you could just let her know that. We have 2 more workshops left. One of those workshops has specific items left, and I can't remember. Plant operations, business, transportation, technology. And then the last workshop will be the discussion, the public hearing, followed by more discussion from us. So if there are specific information or people that you'd like to hear from, if you'd let Dr. Rodriguez know, I think that would be really helpful, because we want to make sure that anything that we're talking about changing in the budget, that we have enough information to make a good and well-informed decision on that. And that's it. Are there any questions? Yes, Mr.
Do you mean, I submit all my questions in advance, or just if I need to, are you talking about stuff that's we've already talked about, and I might have follow-ups?
Yeah, so if you have more questions that are coming up, I'm talking about questions if you might need information that will take some time to put together. If you have follow-ups from groups that we've seen already who maybe are not coming back to the next meetings, that you want to make sure that somebody's there to answer your questions, that kind of thing. That concludes my report. Dr. Rodriguez?
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Koo. Just to let you all know, we've had some difficulties finding yet another date for the rescheduled auditorium gala due to the building of sets for our upcoming play, and those sets get built right on stage. However, I did talk to Mrs. Hiskovich, and we plan on having a gala or a dedication for our new auditorium, which looks absolutely beautiful, in sometime in early April, and we will let you know when we secure a date. I'm handing out for you the CAPS, Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, public policy agenda, and this really keys off to what Mrs. Koo was just talking about. You will see many of the issues that were raised at this morning's legislative breakfast. The goal each year for CAPS in developing this agenda is for the purposes of fostering equity and excellence and innovation in Connecticut's public schools in alignment with a vision that articulates an education that is not only personalized for students, but sets students on a good path for college and career. As I mentioned, interestingly, this morning was a really meaningful breakfast hosted by CABE and Ed Advance, and the most predominant issues that came up focused on many of the unfunded mandates that have truly negatively impacted districts, all well-intentioned, but will certainly prove costly for districts moving forward. And this public policy really does make a credible statement about this from the perspective of the superintendents, with well-thought-out responses to these mandates to help our districts and legislators have more informed decisions moving forward. So that's for your perusal, your information only. And finally, we have the NAF comedy show on Saturday. I will be there to welcome everyone, and that is really truly a wonderful event to raise funds for all Newtown schools. I also do have tickets for anyone who wants to make a last-minute purchase. It really is a wonderful event and certainly supportive of education. There will be 3 comedians from Caroline's, and it should really prove to be another outstanding community event on behalf of all of our schools. That's all I have.
Thank you. Move on to, oh, I'm sorry, were there any questions? Committee reports. Do we have any policy?
The policy committee met, as we always do. We discussed policy 6172.4, which is parent-family engagement for Title I students. That's a required policy under the Every Student Succeeds Act. We're moving towards bringing you a final version of that policy. The big news on the day is that we solidified our committee meeting schedule for the year. It was a very big deal. So our, 28 meetings of 2018 are all set. We also discussed the distance education virtual online courses policy, that's 6172.6. We have a few more pieces to finalize on that as well. We discussed board member use of social media, which would really not be a policy, but more of a bylaw. We decided not to take that up as a policy committee at this time. And then we also discussed policy number 5122, which is assigning students to a teacher in classes in grades K through 12. And we're moving towards finalization on that policy as well.
Good evening. This past weekend, students took part in the Western Region High School Music Festival at Staples High School. Interested students auditioned in November, and those accepted for the choir, band, orchestra, or jazz band were invited to attend the festival to perform in their given ensemble. Rehearsals took place all day on Saturday and part of Sunday, with performances on Sunday afternoon and evening. These students are now allowed to audition for the next level, the All-State Music Festival, which takes place in April. Being accepted into one or both levels of festival is an incredible accomplishment for these high school musicians.
Midterm exams have been conducted across the high school over the past 3 days, and they are scheduled to continue into their final day tomorrow. Despite the recent weather and now upcoming weather, students have continued their efforts to study and excel in their exams, and teachers at the high school have been unrelenting in preparing their students for testing. After exams, the second semester will begin on Thursday. This marks the end of some half-year classes, the beginning of others, and the continuation of full-year courses for students. Freshmen will be provided with their new schedules, making it easier to digest the changing schedule.
On January 30th at 4:30, the ceremony for any individuals graduating early from the high school will take place. Students who have fulfilled their credits and requirements and indicated that this past semester would be their last will be recognized and graduate from high school at this ceremony. Some students will be attending college early, starting this next semester, while others may enter the workforce or follow other endeavors. We are very proud of all of our early graduates.
NHS athletics have continued their season despite the weather. This past week, the wrestling team hosted Youth Wrestling Night. Here, youth wrestlers and their families were granted free admission, and the young athletes were given the chance to run the mat in front of the crowd at the beginning of the meet. The past weeks also saw a boys basketball fundraiser at Cover 2, where a portion of profits were donated to the team's budget.
The opportunity to host a student from Spain or France is currently open to students at the high school. Any student can apply to be a host to a visiting student. The visiting student will stay with the Newtown High School student, shadowing them at school, attending their activities with them, and exploring the local area. This is a wonderful opportunity for students to be an ambassador and represent their school and community while learning about another country's culture and customs from a fellow student.
Elle Sawley, an NHS senior, was recently crowned Miss Connecticut Teen at the Miss Connecticut Teen USA pageant at the Palace Theater in Stamford. You may remember Elle from when she was recognized here for her program Lunch Love, which aims to provide school lunches to those who may not be able to afford them, and she is now using her new platform to encourage the program's growth. It goes without saying that we are very proud of Elle for her achievement and for her continued efforts towards those in need. The past weeks have shown that despite weather, NHS students and staff are steadfast in their commitment to academics, athletics, and community service, and they look to continue this commitment into the second semester.
Any questions? Teachers have been unrelenting. Did you have a date for the graduation? Like this? Oh. Okay. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Now you can go home and study for the exams that might not happen depending on the weather. Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda we have financial report. I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending December 31st, 2017. Ms. Lightlang makes the motion, and Mr. Busan seconds. Oh, we'll get the report before we take a vote on it, right? How about that?
This is the midpoint of our fiscal year, and we have 6 months of records under our belt at this point. We spent $5.3 million during the month of December, $3.7 million on salaries and $1.6 million on all other. The anticipated obligations have changed from the previous month. We are looking better as we get more months under our belt. I have the anticipated obligations included at 75% of the excess cost grant, which is the same as what was reported last month. All of the main object accounts are in a balanced position, a black position, with the exception of other purchase services, which includes the tuition, which once we receive the excess cost grant, that will put that back in a black position. The budget still is in a negative position, but it's mitigated quite a bit since last month. We're down to $72,000. Yeah, $72,000 compared to about $160 last month. Part of that is because in the salary area, we're finding that our experience in homebound and tutor salaries is better than anticipated. That seems to be on a trend, reversal trend now compared to prior years. We're not spending as much in that particular area. We also will be receiving the ASSO reimbursement transfer from the town. That occurred on January 3rd at the Legislative Council meeting, so it's reflected here below the line. Come the next report, you'll see it included in the total budget. We've experienced some issues with maintenance in the buildings and some pipe breaks, which are going to be somewhat expensive to repair, but we'll let you know more about that next month. But I think we're in a good position now compared to where we started.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Goulet?
Hey, Ron, the temperatures being so cold, how are we looking for our energy consumption as compared to our budgeted energy consumption, if you have any idea?
Well, the fuel oil should be exactly what we budgeted because we locked into a contract to purchase 148,000 gallons. Once we purchase those gallons, we'll be done. I'm pretty sure that'll take us through the end of March. And we also have the ability to switch the Reed School and the high school over to gas. They're currently burning oil now, so as soon as we get close to meeting our contract commitment, we'll switch over to the gas. The gas, believe it or not, is looking pretty good at this point. We're looking at a balance of about $30,000 in the gas account. The electricity is running about $20,000 in the hole, so between the two, we're positive 10 at this point. If we don't have weather like we had around the holidays, I think we'll be fine. If we have another extended cold snap, that's what really chews up a lot of fuel, so I'm hopeful that won't happen.
Anyone else? For things like the pipes, is that something that is covered by insurance?
No, our insurance for any damage to schools is $25,000 deductible, first of all, and those types of things are typically covered. And the pipe that broke at Meadow was a result of a heating fan that heated the air in the well housing, and the fan failed, so there was no heat going in there, and the cold air just ended up going in. That's what caused the break. If we had a major flood, then we may put that against insurance, but we didn't have that situation.
We were at Kent School with the flood.
Yeah.
Okay, don't do that, that's a little further. Any other questions? Leslie? All right, we'll move on to old business, which includes, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes of January 2nd, 2018.
So moved.
Stites makes the motion. Anybody like the second motion? Mr. Delia seconds the motion. Were there any comments or on those minutes? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Who's abstains? Otherwise, it passed with 4 votes. And then we'll move on to the student performance data report in our new business. So, Ms. Evans Davila, do you have a report you'd like to share with us? Can everybody see? Are you using the screen?
I'm using the screen, and Janice Gabriel was going to help me with advancing the slides for me.
And you have it?
You have a picture of that in the packet? The same as that.
Thank you.
I'm waiting for you to go there, and you have the remote. How about that? So, Board of Ed members, it's been a while since the district has looked at student data. I have looked at it with the CNI subcommittee last year, but this is a conversation that's timely given the recent presentation of our proposed budget, which, like the student performance data, ties directly into our leadership goals, our strategic plan, and our initiatives. So tonight we're going to look at student performance data on the broader level assessments such as the Smarter Balanced in English and Math, grades 3 through 8, the CMT and CAP, which was the outgoing, now former assessment in science, which took place in 3, 5, 8, and 11 over the years, and the advanced placement exams and Connecticut School Day SAT, one of our newer exams. I'm going to ask you respectfully if you could hold your questions until the end of the presentation so that then we could discuss and make comments in view of the overall picture of performance in the district. I want you to keep in mind that tonight's presentation still has a larger piece of the puzzle behind it, not on the screen today, and that is all of the work we do in our PLCs with in-house data that gives us a fuller picture of the individual students and how we service them within the school environment. We're all on the same team, but of course, our classroom daily interactions with students for that anecdotal data we get in terms of everyday performance, as well as the screeners and progress monitoring that we do, our mid-year and our end-of-course assessments at the upper level, formative assessment, all of that combines to create a greater portrait than a snapshot from these broader level assessments can give us. So with the Smarter Balancing ELA literacy grades 3 through 8, we'll start, and then we'll move on to the math and the same assessment battery. These assessments in Smarter Balance have been in place for 3 years now, as you can see by the first table up there, and they have replaced the Connecticut Mastery or CMT in these content areas. Smarter Balance assessments, you might have heard, were collaboratively developed through a consortium of states, and they were designed to align tightly to the Common Core standards. And these standards, of course, are the basis of our curriculum and our instruction in the district. So in this slide, on table 1, I'd like to talk to you first about rough cohort change, but I want to call to mind for you that similar to the way these results are discussed broadly in the press, we are looking at the percentage of students at the target for Connecticut, which is levels 3 and above in most cases, but particularly in this exam, it's levels 3 and 4. You will see that those are the percentages you're looking at there. There's a broader column that is wider, and that's related to Newtown's results in this table, and the thinner, narrower column is the Connecticut results, just so you can see how we place against the state. So in this rough cohort change data, what you're really talking about is taking this sort of imprecise, roughly group set of students who formed grade 3, for instance, at the time the exam was given in the first year, that now become grade 4 and later become grade 5 the following year. That's the basis of this color coding you see stepping down in this chart here. So it's called rough cohort because there's no control. It's not what they call matched student data, which is very precise and eliminates the scores of any students that might have went out of district or entered late and things of that nature. So with the rough cohort data, if you take a look at green, for example, which is one of our first cohorts on here, you're looking at the students who represent our current 6th grade. And you'd see if you follow them through years 1, 2, and 3, you show a slight increase in the percentage meeting the target as these students move from grades 3, 4, and 5. In fact, it moves from 75% at the target level to 76% to 77%, sort of a slow and steady increase there. As you look at the remaining cohorts, which follow underneath it, you would notice a decline in these groups as they move through time. In Table 2, we're looking at performance category data, particular just to the 2017 assessment. This tells you by grade the percentage of students in Newtown and Connecticut that placed in each of the 4 levels of scoring. In addition, if you look at the last 2 columns, that's the column important for targeting, and that tells us the number of students that made the grade, so to speak, by the state's look at it. So this information will tell you in the last 2 columns that in grade 3, 76% of our students, for example, met the goal in comparison to 52% of the students in Connecticut. It never seems to be a problem for us or a challenge achieving higher than the state of Connecticut. The information in these tables was important to us at the time the data came from the state. It helped us for me to work with the previous administration in selecting ELA as the next core subject area that would come forward for a self-study, having also worked with science during my first year of tenure here, and before I came, math was the focus of the self-study. What came out of that self-study, you might remember, was presented in a series of recommendations to the board, and that presentation came late last year. And that led its way into our committee work that we have monthly in the ELA K-12 committee. It's work such as, directly from those recommendations, concept-based units of study being aligned to the Common Core. It is establishing common teaching practices and curriculum implementation. It is also providing PD and coaching. These were some of the top priorities that came through in the ELA study. Other actions we've taken to address this data include Reed Intermediate School and Newtown Middle School getting together for on-site PD, or having on-site PD from a literacy coach and renowned author who comes into the schools to further the work of the summer literacy institutes we've been doing, and that work is providing strategies to all staff members at all grade levels in those 2 schools in differentiating the instruction within the Reader's Workshop model beyond just a student picking a just right book or an instructional level book for themselves. Also, another action we've taken is elementary through high school. There's been curriculum revision in ELA taking place, along with facilitators brought in to support our concept-based model so the curriculum is written in alignment with that. This happened last year, and it's scheduled for the present year, and it appears in the budget for next year as well. We've also purchased the updated Teachers College reading and writing units last year, and we're using those to align our curriculum. These newly released sets of reading and writing units are tied directly to the Common Core, and they came with a battery of mentor text used in the classroom. These were placed in grades 3 through 8. ELA committee meets monthly, as I said, and they're reviewing revised curriculum that's ready to come forward through the approval process, and they are addressing the recommendations of the self-study. The latest thing they're working on in subcommittee is word work and how it fits with a phonics sequence and how it's important all the way up the grades in terms of understanding the roots of vocabulary and making sense of unfamiliar words. Also, reading interventions is being looked at in that group. The K-8 ELA coordinator and the NHS department chair worked together with me to arrange the district PLC time, and during that time, we get together and we try to ensure that our instruction is aligned and the student expectations of equity, and they do increase in rigor, and that resources are in place. On the next slide, you're looking at the DERB data and the Connecticut data for how we place grades 3 and 8 combined in ELA last year in Smarter Balance. And what you will find is the DERB districts are in alpha order here. They're not by grade, by ranking, because we're dealing with so many grade levels and it changes grade to grade. A look at Connecticut's results in the blue highlight in comparison to Newtown in the yellow will indicate again, no issues performing significantly higher than all students combined across the state. The data does show grade 3 has a 75.4% of students performing at levels 3 and 4, which is the state's target, which places us 8th out of 21 within the districts in the state listed on that column. In this group, grade 5 ranks 13th out of 21, with 77.2% of our students meeting goal. We're focused on attaining growth in all grade levels, growth we don't see across all grade levels there, through our PLCs, which regularly meet to review data within each school, particular to our learners' needs. And that's what I referred to in the opening of this presentation as that larger piece of the missing puzzle that focuses on a complete picture of individual students' progress. This data has informed our request for the 2018-19 Curriculum Department budget proposal, which you heard about recently from me, for continuance of on-site coaching and readers, writers workshop model, the curriculum revision work to take place in ELA as well as reading in grades 3 and up, PD and support in concept-based curriculum and teaching and learning, and support for ongoing curriculum committee work. As we move to Smarter Balance Math, the companion assessment for grades 3 through 8, I'm going to take a few minutes to look at similar data arranged the way you saw it for the other. So table 1, of course, is our rough cohort data again. This time I call your attention to the orange cohort, which represents our 7th grade, and the pink cohort, which represents our 8th graders this year. And you would see performance increases over time in those areas. Our current grade 9, however, for example, shows a 3-point decline moving from, as the students move from grade 6 to 7 to 8 over time. Table 2, again, provides you your performance category data. And again, it's showing we do well in comparison to Connecticut in mathematics, but also our focus remains on improvement. We always want to do better. Our actions that we've taken in response to this data for student performance is linked to not only this data, but also our in-house data, and it connects with our budget requests. For instance, the middle school is implementing big ideas, which is the text and instructional resources and assessment resources and digital resources that you approved last year. And that is linked into some direct PD they're receiving from the publisher and work they're doing in-house to be selective about the resources that they're using from this. Reed Intermediate School has begun curriculum revision in grades 5 and 6 mathematics during this school year with the support of facilitators that are brought in, training them in concept-based models. And this work will also continue into the summer when we'll have grade 7 teachers join with grade 6 teachers to ensure that there is alignment as we move grade to grade. That's one of the clearest directions we've gotten over the years from the board, and also a clear request from teachers too, to have more of this collegiality where we look at how students move through the system and the supports and the materials and resources and expectations. So math teachers from Reed and the middle school also, as recommended by my instructional cabinet, which consists of department chairs and also the approved positions that you voted in last year for the curriculum coordinators, the K-8 curriculum coordinators, they've come up with the idea that it's important for Reed and for the middle school to engage in coordinated visits between the two schools into classrooms. They're interested in things like the difference in time available from math versus it being a block in the elementary and schools and the intermediate schools, seeing how that moves into the faster pace of a single classroom period in the secondary school or in the middle school, and making sure that they're asking enough out of students, providing the right supports, and getting them set. I thought that this was a really good move on the teacher's part because it lets them not only look at instruction, they get to look at pacing. They've talked a lot about wanting to see, rather than just tell students, well, this will get much difficult, you'll have to move much quicker and faster when you're in the secondary school. Now they want to make sure they're advising correctly and they see how it moves, and to see if they also need to raise their expectations of students as they near the end of the year. Elementary teachers are receiving support from their math specialists. You might have heard that there was a newly released version of Stepping Stones, our math resources. So they worked before school ended and at the start of the school year, getting teachers supported in transitioning to the newly released version. Concept-based curriculum has been completed with a concept-based facilitator in grades K through 1. It was finished during the summer. It was worked on together even with ELA and these facilitators month by month, on a quarterly basis, and away from the facilitator throughout the school year last year. So they were lucky enough to be able to have the manpower to wind that up during the summer, and just passed through a couple of curriculum committees, and it's on its way to CNI soon, and you'll soon see that. This work will continue up the sequence into the summer, so we saw a real need to really format our curriculum. It's not so much filling in a template, as you heard Dr. Rodriguez and I talk last year when we talked to you about concept-based curriculum, but it's about the greater rigor and the way the knowledge is sustained in a student when you actually do teach and learn conceptually. This next slide is once again the DIRB data. It shows you where we fall. Again, Connecticut is not a top-end score, it's just at the top of the chart, and the DIRB districts are arranged alphabetically below. You see Newtown in the yellow highlight. Connecticut shown in blue, and again you'll see that we do perform significantly higher in relation to all of Connecticut. Our grades 6 and 8 among the DIRG in this list, of also including Connecticut, ranks 10. Our grade 5 ranks 5 compared to Connecticut and the DIRG. We are focused on growth across all grade levels nonetheless in our PLCs, as I've told you with the ELA. And at the secondary level, even our district PLCs continue to work together at the secondary level to align curriculum, student expectations, instruction, and resources. So we move on to the CMT and CAP Science. You might be wondering why I choose to present this data to you, seeing as we've already told you that there will be a field test on the new standards, the next generation science standards this year, which has been an accelerated movement on the part of the state. We were anticipating this field test to come next year. So CMT and CAP is no longer in existence, and the science assessment at the high school is moving from grade 10 to grade 11. So as we move towards an operational test this year, this means that no data will be returned to students or staff. It's purely just a test of the test, and it helps us get acquainted with some of what might appear in these tests. More will be asked of the students in this testing environment. It will demand them to deal with more complexity and application of their knowledge. Their ability to engage in scientific thinking and reasoning will really be stretched, and it will be enmeshed with science and engineering practices, which are part of the assessment. So it's important that we look at this science data from the existing or the former state mandated tests as we look forward to preparing students for this new, more rigorous assessment, which is coming. And this transition has loomed large in the district. You've supported the 4-year implementation plan that we have, and this is a transition which you know from my presentation is clearly tied intimately to our budget proposal for curriculum revision, instructional materials, and professional learning. As we look at combined CMT and science data for 2017 in DIRB in Connecticut, you will see that we have Newtown, Glastonbury, Greenwich, Fairfield, all hovering where we are right around 75% at or above goal. When we drilled down into the data, we found that the student performance does increase as students move into the middle school, where they benefit from increased instructional time in science, as well as more experience with hands-on labs and inquiry-based learning. Therefore, our actions that are indicated in the 2018-19 budget proposal center on the transition to NGSS, including providing the instructional resources like mystery science and the correct units to our K-12 staff for implementation, to continue to provide PD both for our leadership team that's guiding this transition, as well as our teachers in the instructional shifts needed for this. Also to support curriculum revision across all grade levels, supplies and materials for lab experience, and to support the new units of study. I've explained to you how we found out how costly this is and how we're stepping in the responsibility for this at the central office level, and we'll give that over to the next year's implementation unit by unit to each of the schools in their budgets. So support for the offerings for science pathways have also enlarged in what we do. You've had a presentation on biomedical coming to light in Project Lead the Way at Newtown High School. Going down a level in Newtown Middle School, we've talked to you about robotics as part of Project Lead the Way as a science pathway. And in Reed, we've talked about increasing science instructional time in the schedule, as well as the implementation of a STEM pilot we've asked you to support through the budget and also just through your assent and listening to the presentation that Mrs. Huberti brought forth. As we move to advanced placement, we're going to take a look at this measure of our student success that's not part of a state mandated battery of assessments, but it reflects the performance of a student with the drive and the talent who's taking advantage of the multiple pathways we open up to them to enhance their education and prepare them for college. So it's voluntary that they go to these courses, and of course, you know, by exams, a college board AP program dependent on the school and its standards that they apply to. It is possible for the students to earn advanced college credits while still in high school, opening parts of their college schedule to pursue other courses and electives. In the advanced placement data for 2016-17, we put together a slide for you that shows you our 2-year performance in terms of the number of students who participated in advanced placement exams and the percent scoring at levels 3, 4, and 5. The tan bar in these graphs represents the number of tests taken by students, and the gray bar represents the number of tests in which students scored a 3, 4, or 5, the desirable score. In 2016, you can see students participated in 742 separate tests. 742 tests were taken by our students, in which 620 of these earned scores of 3 and above. That's a full 84% of scores at this level. In 2017, students sat for for 727 AP exams in a variety of subjects, with 595 of these earning 3, 4, or 5, comprising 82% of the scores this year. This is something to be very proud of, particularly when you consider the way those schedules look for students who are frequently engaged in 1 or more AP exams. I know you appreciate that. In the next slide, I want to move us forward to our Connecticut School Day SAT, which is the new SAT, which began last year in ELA and math and was placed in the grade 11 level. That might sound familiar to you, grade 11, because you've just heard me say that the NGSS field test, in the infinite wisdom of the state, has also been put in grade 11 at a time when students really don't have much on their plate, I'm sure, right? So all students take this assessment. This is everyone. And it takes place during the school day, as the name implies. It's meaningful to the students, we find, on so many levels, because this is a test they trust to give them legitimate data, and so do we. And their parents trust it as well. It's been around forever. And it's also tied to Common Core standards. Unlike the previously mentioned state data that we reviewed, and also the previous, you might be familiar or remember the capped ELA and the capped math and the capped science I just spoke about in English language arts and math. The Connecticut school SAT is different because students see it as relevant and they see it as significant when they sit for testing, and I think you'll find their performance proves that. And it's mainly because they understand the link to their future college plans and their career paths. You make that so seamless, Ms. Gabriel, I must say. I just barely take a breath and you switch. So what we're looking at here in Table 1 is, I'd like you to understand, we're looking at what could be looked at, it could be called achievement change data, if you will. It's not the same cohort as students, but it's looking at how we as a district performed 1 year into the next, even though they're different students at this grade 11. I want to keep in mind our results look pretty great, okay? And in year 1, you need to know that this test sort of came out of the blue in the year it was implemented. There was not an opportunity for teachers to gird down, put their nose to the grindstone, and teach very differently than they already had been teaching. So this, to me, 2016 is the purest of what we can do. And it also shows student motivation, I think. In 2016, you can see that 95%, that's 403 out of 424 of our students, oh, excuse me, you can't see this on the table. I'll tell you. I told you all students participate in this. That's the ideal, right? You try to get them all to come in and to participate. We met the state standard and we exceeded it another year. 95% of our students took the 2016 SAT and ELA and math, 403 out of 424 students that year. And in 2017, participation rate in year 2 was 97.6%. That's 410 out of 420 students. That's pretty impressive when you think some students might not be planning on college and might have an alternate career path in mind. Yet you can see they have capability as they're poised for graduation. So in table 1, let's look what makes this so nice to understand after some of the picture we've gotten before. Performance in terms of percent scoring at the state's target levels of 3 and 4 with respect to the average score could be seen on table 1. ELA in year 1, 88.6% of students scored at levels 3 and 4. That's compared to the state coming in at 65%. We had, the next row you can see, an average score of 577 in ELA in that year compared to 520. In year 2, sticking with ELA, you see that we had 87.8% of these students at levels 3 and above, where Connecticut had 65.4. So we held relatively steady here from year 1 to 2 in terms of percentage at the target range. However, we did gain 3 points in average score, moving from 577 to 580. And I shouldn't say however, because when students are scoring that high, there's not much room for movement there. And as we go to math, you can see in the next section of the table that in year 1, 65.5% of students met target in math, and it's typical that the math scores in states will be lower, and you can see that by the state's marker where they only earned, what was it? Is it 39.3%? I see up there? With an average score of 562. In year 2, the scores were 73.2%. It's a pretty nice gain at levels 3 and 4, which was an increase of 7.7% compared to the state, which only saw a 2.2% gain that year. And we had an average score of 578, which was a full 16-point increase in math from our year 1 to year 2. This is plenty to be proud of. And particularly in showing what our students can do, where they see relevance and rigor in the way they've been primed through the years. In table 2, we can see the 2017 results as I've shown you compared in SBAC. You can see here performance category results. What percentage of students performed in category 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then of course I combined the categories that matter for goal 3 and 4. And when you look in those last 2 columns, yellow is Newtown, staying consistent with other slides, and blue is Connecticut. The last 2 columns show you Newtown far exceeds the state percentage of students at a level 3 plus. This table shows our performance among all DIRG B districts in Connecticut, and this is really good news as well. On the left, you see a table for ELA performance within the DIRG and in Connecticut, and on the right, you see the math table relative to 2017 and percentage of students at levels 3 and 4, excuse me. What do we see? Newtown's yellow has 87.8% of students meeting the state target in ELA, which places us 5th out of 20 on the list. And in math, we're 4th out of 20. This tells us that we can be confident, in my opinion, and in Dr. Rodriguez's opinion, we talked about this, we were quite crowing over this. It tells us that we can feel confident that our students are prepared for college and career, and that they're leaving us with tools when they see a relevant exam that they can tap, that show their success, and that they're poised well for their graduation and senior year. As you've observed from my comments regarding all the performance data throughout this presentation, we still remain focused on continuous improvement. That's our mantra, and our actions are tied to that, and you saw it in the budget proposal. This includes asking your support and the other boards that will review our budget support in sustaining our curriculum development to align more fully with the conceptual teaching and learning, in the revision of our algebra and geometry curriculum and also our math TAP program curriculum that you saw in the budget proposal, as well as the English electives that were noted in the budget proposal, but that's not where curriculum revision ends. We also have plenty of work being done in the humanities and the sciences and other electives. So NHS staff and administration appeared before this BOE last year and this year with several presentations tied to instruction and programming that enhances student learnings in all areas. I'll remind you of the Senior Experience 21, which is commonly referred to as the capstone, which Dr. Rajiv just had a meeting at the high school tracking again today in its pilot year. And they also brought forward the proposal for biomedical, Project Lead the Way, and the STEM partnership that you saw. There was also the STEM partnership you saw 2 years prior, I believe. There was the resequencing of the math courses you saw last year, and you also saw the redesign of our Spanish into a hybrid offering. So these are serious examples. So I'm going to say it maybe embarrass you a little bit about how Dr. Rodriguez in guidance as a true instructional leader helped shape Newtown High School and its offerings together with the staff working collaboratively. So SAT paints a very good picture of where we're headed, and the budget shows you where we need work. Okay, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
I think it's page 2, reading. I'm just concerned about, or maybe you can help me understand, it seems like there's a decline from grade 6 to grade 8, especially in that red group. It's okay. Smarter Balanced ELA.
Talking about the page with 2 tables on it?
Yep.
Okay, where are
So,
you looking?
The red group.
Mm-hmm.
That concerns me seeing that.
It can, yeah.
And you know, even I guess, is it pink? I'm colorblind, but I think it looks white.
The one right above is pink.
Yeah, it went from 77 to 67.
77 to 71 to 67, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's,
then the one above that, 75 to 69. So
Mhm.
I'm seeing a decline over 3 years.
Mhm.
That seems to me, I don't know, can you help me understand that and what's being done to address that? Because that, especially that red group, they're freshmen now.
Mhm.
So they went from 78 to 65. That's a full 13-point decline.
Mhm.
So what is being done to help that particular cohort achieve in reading?
That is where you have seen, that's literacy, not just reading, I will say, okay? And what you have is the English 9 curriculum, that standard curriculum that you saw come before you a couple of weeks ago from Abby, which we hailed and regarded as very laser focused on conceptual learning and also having very unique ways of looking at text and challenging students to do analysis complete with rubrics. That's one of the many ways that we are looking at that. And we also were working on the firmer integration of Common Core standards through the units that we're giving to the people and the conceptual work we're doing and the curriculum writing we're doing in grades 7 and 8, Dan, because the thing is you don't want to repeat that either. In grades 7 and 8, we invested a lot of money around, in hours I should say primarily, because that's the most important part, around bringing staff together to work out reading interventions as well as the language arts curriculum. So Nadia headed that group, and they took a hard look at the assessments they're using, how they are using strategies with students, and how she's pushing into classrooms.
Can I just follow up on that? Did you more on that?
Can I just say, by the way, Nadia, for those of you who might not know, is the District KA literacy coordinator.
Did you have more on that particular chapter? I just was curious whether our own in-house, the NWEA testing backs up this, what we're seeing here. Is that similar in the pattern that you see?
We see an increase in our NWEA. Teachers write their goals around NWEA. We are not blind to that, even though they both focus on the Common Core, they are different tests. And you have got the writing component performance test that has now dropped out of, and these scores have been scrubbed by the state of Connecticut to reflect that. It's now dropped out of the ELA battery. They assess it in a different way rather than student composition. So what we've been doing in 6 and 7 and actually 5, 6, 7, and 8 is we have taken Kate Roberts, the renowned author who helped lead our Literacy Institute, and we put her in place for 2 full days of coaching in each of the 2 schools during the year. And she takes the questions from the staff, she actually works with and assesses in front of them one of their own students, and she looks at interventions. When I review NWEA data with principals when they bring forward their goals, I can guarantee you that they are always concentrating on the students that need the most growth, and they bring together the SBAC as well as the NWEA. There was a linking study, you might recall me mentioning the year I did the assessment work with the larger committee that NWEA had put out, but we need to test its validity now that the performance test has dropped out of the SBAC ELA to make sure it still coordinates. And that's a conversation I had both with the intermediate school principal and an elementary principal when we were talking about whether or not our NWEA does link to our ELA SBAC assessment. It's kind of unfortunate too, because when you talk to the state about SBAC, their psychometricians, not just their instructional staff, will tell you right out that there are so few questions in each of these categories on the SBAC that it is not meant to be something that you take action on instructionally, because you might not see the same domains that they're choosing questions out of in tasks the next year. However, that's where NWEA really comes in for its differences, because that comes along with a learning continuum. And you might remember that in the prior year's budget, 2 years ago, I requested funding to have a summer coaching institute with the NWEA representative working with our leadership team, and he was teaching them how to use and move through the learning continuum. So you take a test, or your child takes a test, and we can see the exact domains in the Common Core standards, or we could group students together and focus the work, and there's resources always included in that. So that's basically the way we're using NWEA.
So could we look at the NWEA and see whether the pattern is the same in terms of declining scores over with the same cohort? Is that something we can do with the NWEA?
It's not, they don't recommend that you look at NWEA beyond an individual student score. It's the RIT, or the unit that they score a student on, is meant to be an individual growth unit. So when you talk to NWEA about giving you guidance about looking at this data as a whole group, they shy away from that. It's not the intent of the test. So what we do is we group our students according to their RIT, and we look at what percentage of RIT we want to increase in each of our students, and we design interventions around that, and we make goals that say things like students increase this percentage in their RIT, but we don't look at the whole group, nor do they provide a report that lets you look and make a reasonable assumption that's statistically sound about how a group looks. It's really meant to be an instructional growth for one student.
Did I interrupt your flow of thought?
No, you can add like 5 more, but I'd like to finish up. Can I follow up again?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
So, Gene, I guess I have it's kind of a two-sided question. If you look at the data,
Where are you now? Same
from
chart?
the same chart, but actually if you flip to the next page,
Okay.
if you look at grade 7 and grade 8,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like they ranked 20th.
Mm-hmm. If they might have, I
20th in both, in grade 7
Did you
and
do
grade
the
8.
counting? Yeah, I had another sheet not with me today where I counted. There were some pretty low ones in there.
Right, so I guess so what's being done to address that, and then what's being done to help the kids
The
there?
reading interventions, curricular work we did. the release of the language arts consultant in the middle school to be able to do more push-in services. It has been the curriculum work we're doing with the revised units of study. Everything that I mentioned as part of the data report, there's been an intensivity around the middle school.
And oh, sorry, you finished.
No, I'm finished.
Since it's intense, are you collecting interim data that is helping you gauge growth on a less than annual basis?
I'm consulting with Nadia. That kind of data is collected at the school level. It's looked at heavily through their PLC. She spends an awful large percentage of her day, I shouldn't say awful because it's a positive part of her day, looking at the data and exploring the interventions and what they're getting out of it. That's really, when you look at central office, you look at what's known as tier 3 data. That's the crow's nest view of it, right? And you've probably participated in PLCs yourself. That's where you, like the school has another tier of data, tier 2, and tier 1's where the teacher gets right up underneath that data and they individualize it to the students. But all of this is in the forefront of our DPLC work. I heard it during the summer even as they're talking about revising their reading curriculum. What is it actually they're using to test? What are they drawing out of that data? And what's it telling them about the students in front of them? It's pretty interesting. On paper, it looks like the middle school doesn't have a language arts consultant just to the nature of the structure of how that building runs, but Nadia is very much certified as a language arts consultant and fulfills that role at the middle school.
Anyone else have questions?
I can offer too that Nadia would be happy to come and have a pre-meeting with the CNI on what's being done on this, and then you could decide if this is something that would be useful for her to come discuss at that level with the rest of the BOE.
Okay. Did you have more questions?
I guess I'll start with a comment that I'm surprised by the decline on both ELA and math scores. I find it a little shocking. You talked about the fact that in the NWEA that there's no more composition.
NWEA, the SBAC, the Smarter Balance.
The SBAC,
They
there's
removed
no
the
more
performance task in writing. I think it was
why did we
budgetary.
do that?
Oh, we didn't do it, the state
No,
did
no,
it.
that's
Oh,
what I
okay.
meant.
I believe it's budgetary because that had to be scored.
And so is there another way that we are
Collecting data.
correct?
Yes, we are. We have, we spent last year in our K-12 committee looking at the various rubrics that exist in each of our building levels and looking for common language, and that's one of the things we're doing through the ELA subcommittee work in the ELA committee. They do collect writing samples on a regular basis from the students and they collaboratively score. But in terms of where I believe we need to go next, and I think Dr. Rodriguez believes we need to go, is you need a rubric that moves with the students.
Are we comparing how the students are performing on their composition year after year? Are we tracking how they're doing?
The school would have that data. That's school level data. They have the individual student level data on in-house assessments like that.
And are they doing any sort of norming into the district, like looking at a whole grade level of compositions and seeing if that is progressing?
I cannot tell you definitively, but I will check for you if that is one of the buckets on the Alpine system that's going in, meaning our data warehouse.
That's
I think
the
when
one
you,
I read.
I think when you do something like that though, their rubrics are new to them. They have to norm in the building first to make sure they're calibrated, and then they have to see how that walks to the other district. But it would be interesting to hear if it's only on an Excel sheet or if that's been a bucket formed in Alpine, and I'll check that.
You know, I look at things from perhaps a different lens. And I sort of just wanted to make a comment and an observation. that the most impacted grade by the trauma is the grade that shows here as grade 5 in 2017. I noticed that that grade in both ELA and math are the most consistent over time. And so I'm just wondering if perhaps we should look at the social emotional supports that those students are receiving, because I know that that does have an impact on performance. And I just find that to be really interesting. It tells me that we're doing a really great job supporting those students, and that perhaps we should look at best practice with those students to see if there are some strategies. I know we're talking a lot about, what we're doing curriculum-wise and academic support, but I really feel strongly that this shows that with an increased level of social emotional support, students can achieve at a more consistent, higher level. So I just wanted to make that observation because it was something that stuck out to me.
If I could add on that, you might recall, we had that report under the last administration of how they were faring in terms of their end-of-year grades too. Remember, many of them were on the honor roll, and I think that's why it's important to support the position that you've just supported for the Director of Guidance, and the work that Mrs. Uberti came and explained to the group as her leadership of the District Safe Schools Climate Committee, because they are looking for that, and we do firmly believe of social, emotional, and academics intertwined. There's no belief, right? I mean, it's research proven.
Well, I was just going to add that Alpine system, it's not at Reed, it's across the board. Just to clarify that, that's connected to the Social Emotional Committee, or the Safe School Climate Committee, excuse me. And to be honest, we have not fully dug in to data as we should have. And I think that's step number one. That's first and foremost. What is it that, this isn't even all of the data. I mean, there's so much more in-house data that we could, and anecdotal information and all of those pieces, observations of how students are doing, and the supports we give them, excuse me, through the survey, science-based, science research-based interventions. All of those things are sort of right at the cusp right now. We need a coordination of all of the above. And I think you will see scores go up. I really do.
I think there's a lot to be said, and Dr. Rodrigue and I have shared our aligned philosophies that what gets monitored gets done with vigor and gets done with watchfulness. And some of the questions you asked about, Mrs. Livline in particular, about how are we comparing that data and looking at it over time, that's the move Dr. Rodrigue and I would like to make. Right now, what we're doing is we're looking at what's there. And the Alpine system, if you don't know, I'm not sure if you know this, that data warehouse was specifically chosen because it was the only data warehouse that allowed you to overlay social emotional data, like attendance data, discipline data, over the academic interventions. And that was very interesting to both the state and the committee that selected that.
One more comment, and that is, even that, I don't want to dismiss how important curriculum and instruction is, though. It's aside from the data, because I think that is now with concept-based and really encouraging and having a checkpoint through C&I, Curriculum Council first, then C&I. We've seen such growth and value in what they're doing, working together to create really solid curriculum they understand, and I think the level of rigor has gone up. And that's going to be the first step, and then of course instructionally and looking at data, all of those combined have to work together.
That's one of the many reasons Dr. Rodrigue and I are committed to that. Curriculum development is not something that happens by a party of one. It has to be collaborative, and we also believe that it's tremendous professional growth for a teacher to engage in that. It refocuses you on the standards, and it has you take a real deep look at your own practice. Agree? You agree?
I would love to hear something from either people services or district administrators as to, or school administrators as to how anxiety level of students may be impacting their ability to perform these tests.
Let us talk to our administrative team. I couldn't hear you.
We should include counselors in that.
Any other questions?
I hope for you it also shows you that we do need to consistently look at data. This is an important conversation and it should become a regular part of our dialogue.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this forward because I think it's an important piece of what boards of education should look at as data that should inform our decision. And I appreciate what we have here. I also feel like it's just the beginning and there's so much more that I'd like to see. For example, this data, I'm not sure if that's the grade 10 data, but there's more.
We combined it because it's an outgoing test. When we bring forward the new data, which will begin, not this year, we'll have no data this year. The next year, we will, at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we'll have science data that's real and relevant. But of course, please know, it's a higher standard and a brand new test.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's the good, the bad, the ugly. The data is the data, which is why I think it's important to look at more than just SBACs. And if we have other ways of looking at the data, that would be great too. So thank you very much for bringing that forward. Now we'll move on to public participation. Would anybody like to come up and give us some? Oh, okay. Yes, if you could state your name and address on the record.
My name is Janice Gabriel, 50 Sawmill Road, Danbury, Connecticut. I just wanted to publicly thank you all for your support of the auditorium project. As the person who is in the auditorium the most and has waited a very long time to be back in the auditorium, I can tell you that it has been a labor of love. And to look at the amazing, incredible space that we have now for our students is something remarkable. And while there has been a tremendous amount of frustration on everybody's part along the way, the best moment so far has been to watch our students walk in that door in complete awe and get so excited about the space that they get. Really, I can project. I'm going to project this. My sound is horrible. I need you.
We have to have you on the record.
Yes.
But that part has been the most amazing thing. Our students are so excited about the equipment they get to work on, the new sound. I'll tell you that for those of you who have been in the auditorium prior to the renovation, you know how horrible our sound was. The sound in there is impeccable and incredible. The lighting, we had our students help set up our lighting, all of our tech kids, and the fact that they got to be a part of that meant so much to them, and to work with the professionals already has been just, it's been awe-inspiring to see the kids that want to do this with their life get to be a part of something. And Sunday we held our Unified Theater Show, and a gala is great, and musicals are great, and band concerts, and everything else. But to see our students in wheelchairs get to be on stage for the first time ever was the best thing. So thank you so much for all of your support, not only of me and some of the crazy ideas that I've had along the way, and my frustrations along the way as well, but of our students, because it's really all about them. And they are getting one top-notch auditorium tour. So I thank you all for that.
Thank you. We can't wait to see it too.
Anytime, I'll give you a tour.
April, we'll get, maybe.
You'll be in there before then, like our musical to put up and stuff, and anytime any of you want a detailed tour, we've been in there for exams and classes, we're Zoom in there, whatever Mother Nature allows, second semester classes too.
Thank you.
You're going to do your own project adventure for the catwalks. You go for a detailed tour.
Hey, we can get up there with spiral staircase now instead of
I
climbing.
don't microphone. Is there anybody else who would like to come up for public participation? Sensing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Brissett moves.